Kia ora and thank you for watching. My name is Esther. I'm from Thames Coromandel District Council and we have Dale Lovskoski with us. I'm going to do an overview about TCDC background, but we're going to start with Dale first. He's going to do the electoral process. Over to you, Dale.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for that welcome. My talk today is going to be more about the nuts and bolts of people wanting to stand for election, probably more the do's and don'ts that a candidate can do. And what I refer to in the Thames Coromandel District Council area equally applies for the Waikato Regional Council, basically because we work under the same legislation and rules. So by way of a bit of background information, Thames Coromandel District Council population of about 30,000 with about 25,000 electors, that's resident and ratepayers. We have election day on Saturday the 8th of October and elections are being held for Thames Coromandel District Council and the Waikato Regional Council. And just note, from the 1st of July, there are no district health boards, so therefore there'll be no election for the Waikato District Health Board come in October. All elections in New Zealand are held by postal vote, and for Thames Coromandel District Council, the order of candidate names will be in alphabetical. The order of candidate names will be random. So looking at some key dates, nominations open. They open on Friday the 15th of July and about 4 weeks after that, nominations will close at noon on Friday the 12th of August. Voting packs will be delivered from Friday the 16th of September and just over 3 weeks after that will be the close of voting at noon on Saturday the 8th of October. We'll have progress results as soon as practicable after the close of voting, and the final official results or the declaration of results will be announced on the evening of Thursday the 13th of October. So in 2021, Council reviewed its representation arrangements, and that's the number of elected members, the wards, the boundaries, community boards, all that sort of thing. And councils are required to undertake this process at least once every 6 years. So it was 6 years ago since it last occurred, so it was the time to do this again under legislation. So that review resulted in the current structure being retained, but with an additional councillor added to the Mercury Bay ward. And that was largely due to population growth over the last 6 years in this particular area. Okay, so what elections are required? We've got the mayor elected at large or district wide, so it's the whole area. And we've got 9 councillors, previously it was 8. So there we have the 4 wards there, Coromandel Colville ward with 1, Mercury Bay ward with 3, up from 2, South East ward it's 2, and the Thames ward is 3. And then next slide, then we have the community board members. So there are 5 community boards, no change there from previously, each electing 4 members. And for the Waikato Regional Council, we have the Thames Coromandel General Constituency with 1 member, or the Ngātaid Ki Uta Māori constituency with 1 councillor from that area. So here's a listing by ward of the number of councillors, totaling 9, and that's the number of resident electors, just slightly under 25,000 electors for the district. And there's our community boards. There's our 5 community boards, each electing 4. And there's the number of resident electors for each of those community boards. So regarding electoral systems, councils have a choice under legislation, and they can choose this once every 3 years, whether to use first past the post or FPP, or single transferable voting, STV. Council has resolved to retain the FPP or first past the post electoral system, and most people are aware of how this works. Electors vote by ticking the candidate names. If there's 3 vacancies, then an elector can tick up to 3 names, can't tick any more than the number required, but you can actually tick less or vote for less than the number required. And the candidates with the highest number of votes wins. and this is used for the Thames Coromandel District Council and for the Waikato Regional Council. On to electoral roles. There are actually 2 electoral roles available. The first one is, which is the majority, the biggest one, is the resident electoral role, and that contains all New Zealand citizens or permanent residents aged over 18, resided continuously in New Zealand for 1 year or more, and resided at an address for 1 month or more. And this information is provided to us by the Electoral Commission, and that's taken or extracted from the parliamentary electoral roll. So when someone enrolls for the parliamentary roll, it's a joint enrolment with the local government, and we simply get an extract from that roll to conduct our elections. And the second electoral roll is the ratepayer electoral roll. We call that the non-resident ratepayer electoral roll because it's basically for non-resident ratepayers. So these are the people, for example, that may live in Hamilton and have another property here in Thames Coromandel District Council. So they can apply to get onto the non-resident ratepayer roll for Thames Coromandel District Council. So they get all their voting entitlements whether they are on the resident roll. So in Hamilton, in this instance, they'll get all their voting entitlements there. And if they apply and get onto their non-resident ratepayer roll for Thames Coromandel, they can get voting entitlements for this council, but they can't have another regional council vote. There can only be one vote for the region. So they can vote for the Thames Coromandel Mayor and for the ward and for the respective community board, as well as where they live. So that's by application, it's not automatic. So just bear that in mind. People do have to apply for that. And there are about 1,400 ratepayer electors in the Thames Coromandel District Council area. So candidate qualifications. So candidates, you must be a New Zealand citizen aged over 18. You must be enrolled on the parliamentary electoral roll anywhere in New Zealand. So you don't have to actually be on the roll in the area that you're standing for. You can be outside of the area or down country or wherever, but you must be on the parliamentary electoral roll anywhere, somewhere. However, you must be nominated by nominee standing. So if you're, for example, standing for the Thames ward, you can live anywhere, but you must be nominated by 2 electors from the Thames ward area. You can stand for multiple positions. So a person, for example, could stand for the mayor and for a council, for a ward position, and for a community board position. But if you're fortunate enough to be elected to more than one position, then you take the highest position. So, for example, if you stood for the Thames ward and the Thames community board, and you were successful in both positions, then you take the highest one, Thames ward councillor position, and the next highest polling candidate for the Thames community board then takes that place. However, you cannot stand for both the Thames Coromandel District Council and the Waikato Regional Council, so you've got to choose which one you want to stand for. And you can't stand for more than one ward, so you can actually have to choose which ward you want to stand for, or which constituency, if you're wanting to stand for the regional council, you want to stand for, but you actually can stand for more than one community board if you so wish. So still on qualifications, so if you are successful, you are elected, then elected members or their spouses can't have a contract with Thames Coromandel District Council over 25,000 in any one financial year. So it's just a little technicality there, that there's another step should you be elected, and that's you should really seek advice from the Office of the Auditor General if you're in that situation where you do have a contract. It's likely to be but needs to be followed through should you be elected. So if you're an employee of the Thames Coromandel District Council, you can stand, there's no issue there, and you can be elected to council, but, always a but you must resign as an employee before taking up your position, and that's really just to prevent that conflict of interest between being an employee and an elected member. So you must resign However, it does not apply to a community board member. So if you were a council employee and you were elected as a community board member, then you do not need to resign your position as an employee of the council. So, nomination process. So nominations open on the 15th of July, and nomination papers are available from the council service centres and the Tairua Library, as listed there. And then you can also download one from the council website. There's the website address there, and you can also phone us and we can get one out in the post to you if you would like it that way. So some little rules there. So you cannot nominate yourself. And as I said earlier, you must be nominated by 2 nominators from the area you're standing for. You do need to submit with your nomination, or for each nomination, a deposit of $200. So that's for each position you're standing for. So if you're standing for council and community board, and it's 2 positions, so that's a total of $400 or $200 each. Most candidates, probably about 95% of candidates, actually get that deposit returned to them. There's a little formula in the legislation that if you poll greater than 25% of the lowest successful candidate, then you actually can get your deposit back. And as I said, most candidates do. That is mandatory, that deposit, but what is optional is a 150-word candidate profile statement. Now, we really encourage all candidates to submit a candidate profile statement with their nomination paper, because that's really what the electors out there, when they receive it in the post with your vote, with the voting document, they really do want to see and read a little bit about you. And what you need to cover in that 150 words is a little bit about yourself. What do you want to see if you were elected? And that type of interesting information. And it's a really good way of getting your message across to electors, and it's free, goes out with the voting documents. So we highly encourage everyone to submit that with their nominations. That candidate profile statement, it has a word limit of 150 words in English. You can also have 150 words in Māori, but the English and the Māori must largely be consistent with each other. So you don't, in fact, get 300 words of different messaging. You actually still get 150 words of the same messaging, but more on a translation side of things, but with the languages. You can actually have other languages too if you wanted to, depending on the community makeup. But those other languages must total 150 words. We strongly encourage a passport-sized coloured photograph to be submitted with your nomination as well. This is not mandatory, as is the profile statement, but we strongly encourage candidates to submit this, because the electors really do want to read about you, want to know about you, and they also want to see what you look like. So just pop that in your nomination as well. We require evidence of citizenship. So one of the legal requirements is a candidate must be a New Zealand citizen. So we do require evidence of that, and it can simply be a photocopy of your passport or birth certificate or naturalisation certificate or any of those types of things. We do keep that private, so it's not made for public viewing, but we do require that for internal purposes, just for peace of mind that we know that each candidate is in fact compliant with legislation and is a New Zealand citizen. Candidates are able to have an affiliation, so that's an endorsement, if you like, from a group or organisation. So you might be wanting to stand or be supported by a group in the community, might be a ratepayers group or whatever. We do seek evidence of that from the organisation. So if you're standing or endorsed by an organisation, we do ask for evidence of that from the organisation. And that can simply be a letter from them saying that they support or endorse you as a candidate. You can just have the word independent alongside your name on the voting document, and that itself sends a message that you are independent and you're not supported or endorsed by any other political group or organisation. And you can simply leave it blank. You don't need to fill one out. If you leave it blank, then nothing will show alongside your name. There are some affiliations that we will not accept. We don't accept a slogan, a vote for Dale, for example. We don't accept anything that's indecent or slanderous. So you're required to include on your nomination paper itself statements that you need to tick. A statement of a principal place of residence. So you're either in the area that you're standing for, or you're outside the area that you're standing in. So that is a requirement on the nomination paper, and that goes out to all the electors alongside your candidate profile statement. And that basically tells the elector that you live in the area that you're standing for, or not, you do not live in the area, and that they will vote appropriately. And also on your on your nomination paper, there's a area there that requires you to add other positions you might be standing for. So you might be standing for ward and community board. So that needs to be stated there, because that information also goes out to the electors alongside your candidate profile statement. So I'm standing for the Thames Ward again, Thames Ward and the Thames Community Board as an example. Now you can return your nominations to any of those council service centres listed earlier, or to myself, the electoral office, and they do close at 12 noon on Friday the 12th of August. Now it is a critical time, so at 12 noon the nominations will close. No good running in at 3 minutes past 12, because we cannot accept them by law. And a little plea here, don't leave lodging your nominations until the last minute. Often there are problems with your nomination. A common one is that one of your nominators is invalid, is outside of the area, or has forgotten to change their address since they moved, and that sort of thing. And if you come in at 3 minutes to 12, there's very little time to actually get that corrected. So we do encourage everyone to come in early. There's a whole month or 4 weeks to lodge your nomination, and we encourage everyone to get it in early, so there's ample time for us to check, and if there are any issues, to get you as the candidate to have it fixed. So campaigning. So campaigning can occur anytime. So campaigning can occur from now, for example. There's no restriction on that. The only restriction is council's election signs policies, which do apply. So there's no signs on council property at all, and no signs on private property without permission of the landowner. Now we do stress that, because we have had instances in the past where signs have gone up on someone's property, and the person who owns the property didn't know anything about it, or permission was not granted. So we soon hear about that and ask you to remove it pronto. Now all election advertisements, so you might be considering billboards or signs or notices or pamphlets, the web pages, any of those sorts of things, any advertisement at all must show an authorisation statement. So that's a statement from the person authorising it, and that could be the candidate or the candidate's agent, but you also must show the contact details of that person. Now, up until 1st of July, that had to be the person's place of residence or place of business. And from 1st of July, that legislation changed and broadened the details that can show. So you can now show, for example, a phone number or an email address or a PO box or anything like that, so that we can basically contact the authorising person if there's an issue with the sign. So it is a legal requirement, so we do stress that that statement appear on all information that you have, all advertisements that you have. If you have a web site, for example, on your campaign, it must appear on the homepage, but we do not expect it to appear on posts or tweets or messages, because that becomes too cumbersome. Social media. Great way to campaign. It's instant, it's far-reaching, it's free. So you can promote yourself and your policies, you can run polls, you can encourage people to vote, you can tell them the key dates, etc. So it's really a good tool to have in your campaign. However, council's media channels, they're off limits. So council must remain politically neutral. So there can be no references or campaigning on the council's media channels, and that is monitored. So just be mindful of that. In cybersecurity, normal common sense prevails, keep safe. We're all aware of the pitfalls now of what can happen. Computers can be hacked, etc. So just be careful of that and be very mindful. And the last point there is election offences. So there are a number of election offences that are outlined under the legislation that we work under, the Local Electoral Act. So just familiarise yourself with those offences so that you are aware of them and don't do them, because other candidates will be familiar with these offences and they'll be looking out to you to see whether you are committing any of those. And some of them are, you know, that lack of that authorisation statement or things or treating. So just be mindful of those and just be aware and don't fall into those pitfalls. So candidate expenditure. So there are limits to what a candidate can spend, and they are in population bands. And as you can see there, you know, up to 5,000 or 4,999, you can spend $3,500. And from 10,000 to 19 or 20,000, you can spend up to $14,000. So these, the positions are based on population size of the area, and the limits are inclusive of GST. So don't get into the trap of thinking, oh, I've got $20,000 plus GST. You haven't. You've got $20,000 including GST. So on the table here, we've got the wards with the population and the limits that you can spend. So if you look down the bottom there, the mayor, with about 33,000 population, can spend $20,000 maximum, up to $20,000 maximum. And for the Mercury Bay ward with 10,450, you can spend up to $14,000. And here's your community boards there, again with the population and the limit there. So Mercury Bay again, as the ward matches the board matches the ward, you can spend up to $14,000 in that situation. Covered off expenditure limits do include GST. You can't add limits together. So you might think, oh, well, I'll stand for the ward and the board. And you think, oh, well, I've got, let's take a look at Thames. So I might have 14,000 in the ward and another 14,000 in the board. So I've got 28,000 to spend. That's not the case. You take the higher of the two. So in that case, you've only got 14,000 to spend, even though you might be standing for two positions. You do need to keep a track of your expenses and donations. So attached to the nomination paper is a return, and that has to be filled out and returned to me by the 9th of December. So even if that's a nil return, so you haven't spent anything or received any donations, that still has to be returned. Just simply put nil and sign it and date it and return it to me by the 9th of December. Now that is enforced, so it's a legal requirement that we have this returned, and if it's not returned, it does become an offence, and we have to, by law, forward that all onto the police for them to investigate. So those completed forms are available for inspection for 7 years, so they actually go on the council website, so anyone in the world can inspect those for up to 7 years. So just to plea there at the last bullet point, make sure that they are accurate, that they are completed correctly. It is an official declaration and you are signing as to its accuracy, so just be mindful of that when that is submitted. On to voting. So voting period 16th of September to the 8th of October. Voting packs are delivered to electors from the 16th to the 21st of September. And you're able to campaign up to and including election day. So a little bit different than parliamentary elections, where for parliamentary elections you cannot campaign on election day. For local elections you can, simply because it's postal voting with a 3-week voting period. For those that may have missed out on receiving their ordinary vote in the post, or they've just turned 18, or they've lost their ordinary vote, or whatever reason, people can still vote, but they have to vote as a special vote. And these are available during the voting period at all council service centres and the Tairua Library, and also by phoning my office on that 0800 922 822. And just be mindful that with a special vote there is extra paperwork, there is a declaration to be completed and returned, and that requires certain information, so it needs to be signed and witnessed. So if just one of those is not completed, unfortunately that whole special vote is disallowed and we cannot count it. So it's really important that the paperwork is attended to correctly. For candidates, please do not collect votes from electors. This is a no-no for two reasons. It's actually an offence to have in your possession someone else's voting documents. And it's also a perception that you never know who's watching you, and a perception that someone gives you their vote and before it's put in the ballot box or in the post box, it could have been interfered with. So it's a perception. So it's best to steer clear of that altogether and not collect votes from other electors. So voting closes at noon on Saturday, the 8th of October. Again, that's a critical time, 12 noon sharp. No votes can be accepted after 12 noon. Ballot boxes will be removed or sealed, and there's no postmark or any facility like that after the 8th of October at noon. So we have results about 2 o'clock on election day. That's going to be about 95% of the votes cast. So those votes will be all votes, including that day's mail, but excluding the hand-delivered ones in the ballot boxes around the district, lodged on that Saturday morning, and special votes. So all candidates will be contacted and the media advised of those results and the preliminary results on Sunday morning, and that'll be all votes counted excluding those specials, which are then packaged up and sent, or the declarations are then packaged up and sent down to the Electoral Commission for verifying validity on the Sunday afternoon, and they give us the results back on Wednesday evening of those allowed and disallowed. And then we have the final results, so that's my declaration of results once we get confirmation back from the Electoral Commission, and that's expected late afternoon on Thursday the 13th of October. Elected members can take office the day after the public notice or the notice of declaration, and in this year it's going to be on the website rather than in printed newspapers. So if it goes on the website, say on Friday the 14th of October, then elected members will be able to take office on the Saturday the 15th of October. However, elected members won't be able to act until after they're sworn in at their first meeting, which will occur later on in October. So some resources to look for. There's the 2022 Candidate Information Handbook that's online on the Council's website. There are hard copies available with your nomination pack as well. Electoral legislation, I've referred earlier to the Local Electoral Act. Have a look at what we have to require to work under. There's a website there where that's accessible. You can attend a council meeting in person or online, so you can have a look at what is actually involved in a meeting. And you can read agendas and minutes, also available online, and there's a website address there for that. And you can simply talk to a council officer if you really got some further questions on what may be involved. And here's my details. Here's our details. So that's me there, Dale Ofsosky from Election Services based in Auckland, and Esther is my deputy, and she's based in Thames. So I think that's all from me, and I'll hand it over to Esther now. So kia ora, everyone.
Very much, Dale. I'm going to go over a little bit about the background TCDC. In my day-to-day job, I work with elected members closely, You give them advice and difficulties in meetings, etc. So, roles on apart. Dale has gone through this a little bit already, but we have, for election, we have the mayor, 9 councillors and 20 community board members. After election, there is the opportunity to nominate a deputy mayor, committee chairpersons, and actually committee members, and 5 community board chairpersons. So, role of an elected member. It is likely your constituents will expect representation on issues that are important to them. However, once elected, you have a larger obligation to represent the entire district or community board area. Sometimes you might have a personal opinion on a topic heard through public submission, but you need to remain neutral on it so that you aren't considered to have a predetermined position on a matter. It is equally important to be truly open-minded. Make sure you take in all of the paperwork, all of the reports, all of the information given before you make a decision at that table. So it goes back to a high-level overview of projects and work programs and considering that whole district-wide or community board area. Consider current and future generations. Be aware of community views. Be open and transparent in your decision-making. Consider the environment and note that elected members cannot direct staff in their duties. And kind of work's involved. So we have a lot of reading, researching and listening to people on topics. Sometimes aren't always in your wheelhouse, but is an important part of the role. Councils cover a wide range of topics, including how they relate to finances and rates. It won't always interest you, but you do need to be willing to learn and engage. So you will do a lot of clarifying and information, attend formal, informal briefings, community meetings, and you need to be flexible around the timings. The incoming council does set a calendar for meetings. However, there can be some changes. You can lobby with other elected members on a decision you're passionate about, so long as you have considered all the research and all of the papers, etc. And you can work with them to get the voting at the table for decisions to pass. Again, it's the majority rules, so the other elected members have to have their vote at the table as well. So, sound exciting? There is more. As a councillor, you'll get to determine council's strategic direction after considering current and future challenges and opportunities, prioritise new works, adopt policies that shape our communities, such as bylaws, financial parameters, and who pays. You lobby central government and other agencies, and as a community board member, you influence all of the above. It's important to note the difference between governance and management. So when you talk about governance, elected members are concerned with policy, as where staff are concerned with administration. So for the mayor, it's considered a full-time commitment. The Remuneration Authority has set a new salary from after the elections, which is 141,181. You have a full use of council car for a small deduction. Phone and electronic equipment is provided. You get to appoint that deputy mayor and community board committee chairs, I should say, sorry. You lead development of planning, policies and budgets, and you are the council spokesperson for the media. As a councillor, your workload ranges from 10 to 20 hours per week. Change the salaries again for the new term. So 42 just plus is the minimum salary that a councillor can get. However, there is more available pool to be allocated. So typically that will go to people with extra responsibilities, such as committee chairs, members, deputy mayor, etc. Mileage also is paid for under some conditions, so 83 cents per K for the first 14,000 Ks, and then 31 cents after that. At the last election, we also had a communications budget of 1,050 annually. That's to be set in our expenses policy, but it will be similar. You can use that for a device, broadband, phone expenses. Community board members work from 5 to 15 hours per week. Their salary ranges from just over 8,000 to just over 10,000, depending on the area. Community board chair salary is double that, and same with mileage. as at the last election, communication allowance is $500 annually. You can contribute that to your own device. So how we do business. After the election period, we have inductions. It's an extremely busy time. We need you to be available and flexible for the first couple of weeks following, to be included in inductions, inaugurals and first meetings. We'll go through training about rules for meetings and processes, training about our technology, introductions to work programs ahead. Also, meetings are booked electronically, so we have 6 weekly meeting cycles. That's subject to change. As I said earlier, the incoming council sets that schedule. And so far, it's always been daytime meetings, but once again, subject to change. News and agendas are also sent electronically. So you bring your own device to a meeting to read your news, etc. You can use your smartphone for alerts, messages, laptop, tablets, iPads for your agendas. Work program. So council set an overall vision and direction for council. Setting direction of council, adopting plans, making decisions about which work programs and services should be provided, and adopting long-term budgets. It is the Chief Executive who employs council staff and are responsible for administrative matters and impending policies set up by the elected members. So community boards need to be strategic thinking about future of community board plans and ensure next steps of projects are underway. So if you need more information, you can go to our website as stated earlier. That has the latest news, agendas, reports, long-term plans, annual plans, and for election information, go to tcdc.govt.nz/election. Thank you for watching today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our council officers, online, etc. Give us a call and someone will be available to help.